Farm Week is a production of the Mississippi State University Extension Service.
Today on Farm Week, the American Farm Bureau Federation says the proposal to cut coal emissions is a non-starter.
Scott County, Mississippi students learn about farm safety as well as careers in agriculture.
In southern gardening, you could call them ditch flowers, but it wouldn't pay tribute to their beauty.
In the markets, December cotton takes a tumble as feeder cattle continue to flirt with the 200-point area.
In the feature segment, in the right place, fertilizer is useful. It can grow food and fiber. Many Midwest areas are finding it where they don't want it, in their drinking water.
We have some land that lays around the city wells, and we're doing a cover crop to try to control the nitrates in the water. The nitrates, the grizzled water, has been moving up slowly, and we're trying to, it's not dangerous levels yet, but we're trying to get ahead of it before they do.
Good day, everyone. I'm Leighton Spann.
And I'm Artis Ford. Welcome to Farm Week.
The Obama administration announced this week that it intends to cut power plant emissions by 30% in 16 years.
Leighton, the announcement would at first glance seem to not have a lot to do with agriculture, but that's not the case according to the American Farm Bureau Federation. Since agriculture is a user of energy-intensive inputs, Farm Bureau says it will cost rural America. AFBF President Bob Stallman said that it will harm the nation's economy, rural communities, and America's farm and ranch families. Stallman said that the reduction would lead to higher energy prices. Farmers would not only pay more for electricity, it takes a lot of electricity to make fertilizer. Its price would have to jump as well. Stallman said U.S. agriculture will pay more for energy and fertilizer under this plan, but the harm won't stop there. The effects will hit home, especially in rural America.
Advances in technologies are connecting many types of jobs to agriculture for the next generation. At the Scott County Farm Safety and Agriculture Day, high school students were educated about career opportunities as well as practicing safety in the ag industry. Farm Week's Amy Taylor reports.
Many students attending the Scott County Farm Safety and Agriculture Day came with the impression that ag careers are all about farming, but they left with a different perspective. Forest High School senior Lindsay Hedge talks about what she learned.
It educates us about more jobs than just plowing. It educates us about how there's engineers working with GPS to make it easier for us and how it has an advanced, and now we're able to feed 155 people from one farm that back in the 1920s could only feed 19 people. It's more science in it now. It's not just, putting a seed in the ground and watching it grow. I was going to be a pharmacist or a physician, but now that I'm going into it, I'm realizing maybe I can just go into engineering.
Hedge says her skills apply to more agricultural careers than she thought, and she's excited to explore those options. Mississippi State University Extension agent Anita Webb says safety demonstrations were also featured at the event.
Southern Pine Electric Power is here, and they're doing some really important programs on safety and tying that back into even farms, like if you're cutting a tree, how you would cut the tree, if you had power lines around, what to do if you had a power line down, and just teaching the safety and the importance of being around power lines. We've got Mississippi State doing some programs with the forestry and the Firewise programs, and then also we have some drug education and tobacco coalition programs. We have got safety programs with the Mississippi Farm Bureau Federation, are doing programs with the ATV safety.
Webb says it's important to emphasize safety and health when discussing these careers because they often involve exposure to harsh chemicals as well as operating large equipment and machinery. The Scott County Farm Safety and Ag Day was held at the Forest High Votech. From Forest, Mississippi, I'm Amy Taylor reporting.
Well, let's check on the Mississippi Weekly Crop Report from the Mississippi Ag Statistics Service in Jackson. This report reflects conditions as of last Sunday, June 1st. As we look at topsoil moisture in Mississippi, surplus in 28% of the state, adequate 63%, but short to very short in 9% of the state. Mississippi corn, 2% of the crop is silking now, which is behind the 5-year average for this state. As far as Mississippi cotton planting, it's on the 5-year average as well at 88%. Emergence about the same, 71%, and squaring also running at about the 5-year average. It's at 1%. Mississippi soybeans, 86% of the crop planted as of Sunday, and that's right on the 5-year average. And emergence is running on the 5-year average at 77%. Mississippi rice, 92% of the crop planted as of Sunday, and that is a little behind the 5-year average for the state, but not much. Emergence also running slightly behind at 86%. Mississippi sweet potatoes, they're running behind a good bit, 12%, only 20% of the crop planted as of June 1st. As we look at Mississippi peanuts, we see that 64% of the crop is planted there, which is several points behind the 80% average for the state. Emergence, though, running about on schedule, 51%. As we look at Mississippi wheat, practically all the crop is headed at this time. Harvest, though, only 3% complete as of June 1st. Normally, it's 30% by this date. As we look at wheat condition, 13% of the crop in excellent shape, 60% of the crop in good condition, fair, 27%. Mississippi watermelons, we see that 82% of the crop planted as of Sunday, and that is behind the 5-year average for the state. In terms of condition, 9% of the crop in excellent shape, good 40%, fair 48%. Well, now, most of us like to see what new varieties that the plant breeders can dream up. Mother Nature can, however, be creative too. In this week's Southern Gardening segment, Extension horticulturist Dr. Gary Bachman shows us some nice roadside flowers that can thrive in our landscapes.
I've often said that many of the plants in our gardens are just a couple of steps out of the roadside ditch. Let me show you what I mean by that. As we drive down our roads and highways, you see many beautiful wildflowers. Right now they aren't used in formal gardens, but they still offer their own beauty when you slow down and take a closer look. Queen Anne's lace is probably a familiar flower to most drivers. The flower color is mostly white with light green or yellow tints. The umbrella-shaped flower is actually a group of smaller flowers. An entire field of buttercup is a sight to behold, forming a sea of yellow. Growing to 18 inches tall, the bright yellow and glossy flowers are displayed at the ends of the stems. Now, purple thistle may be a troublesome weed, but it's very interesting up close. The flowers are extravagantly purplish, and all parts of the plant are prickly. Fleabane is a pretty delicate flower. There can be up to 100 finely textured petals ranging in color from white to pale pink on each flower, while the center is a bright and cheery yellow. Evening primrose has a sprawling growth habit that forms extensive colonies commonly seen along our Mississippi roadsides. The large four-petaled flowers range in color from pink to white. The cup-shaped flowers are delicate with artist-applied dark pink veins. Will any of these plants make it to your garden from the garden center? I don't know, but right now we can enjoy their beauty as we drive by. I'm horticulturist Gary Bachman for Southern Gardening.
Now, Leighton, our state flower of Mississippi is a ditch flower.
Okay.
The coreopsis.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, that's right. It's a bright yellow wildflower. Well, looking at the feature segment today, the use of fertilizer and its potential as a water pollutant is coming under increasing scrutiny. In Iowa, some cities have to spend a lot of money to remove it from their drinking water. Time now for the markets. And Leighton, you say that the sales have kind of gone out of the winds, I should say, have gone out of the sales on cotton prices?
That's right. We'll have a little bit of analysis on what may be happening there in the cotton market. Also ahead this week in this segment, some uncertainty about the price outlook for new crop soybeans. The future of Hillshire brands is up in the air. And it's been another wild week for feeder cattle prices. We do begin with cotton, where the planting pace nationwide is said to be the slowest in 20 years. However, prices have lost steam, as we just mentioned. Extension Ag economist John Michael Riley explained to me on Wednesday what may be happening with cotton. Well, Monday's crop progress report seemed to be supportive of the cotton market.
Yes, it did. We're behind schedule from a national perspective at 74% compared to a 5-year average of 81%. The 74% really is a very low level in terms of planting progress for this time of the year. Really all of that is stemming from, most of it is stemming from the Southwest, primarily Texas, 62% complete versus a 5-year average of 75%. So they're behind. Here in Mississippi, we're at 88%, which is on par with our 5-year average. I think that's indicative of the Southeast as a whole. Pretty much we're up to schedule in terms of planting progress. The Southwest is still lagging behind, and that is supportive given the fact that it is such an important factor in terms of the yields and how the crop will progress through the year.
Now, there has been some rain, much needed rain in the Southwest and Texas, and that kind of took the wind out of the cotton prices a little bit. It did.
The wind has been coming out for a little while, and that really did a number on it. We dropped about 3 to 5 cents, depending on what contract you want to look at, and largely due to the fact that we did receive some rainfall in Texas and parts of the Southwest that was so drought-stricken up to that point. In fact, if you look at Texas's crop condition report, soil moisture content that rated very poor it would definitely decreased in terms of that percentage of soil that was topsoil and subsoil that was needed some moisture. So we did see some measures that the rain did improve the conditions there.
And most traders seem to think overall, big picture, that acreage is going to be down as far as U.S. and cotton this season.
It very well could. If you look at prices throughout the month of May when the bulk of the planting took place, a drop in prices of about 8.5%. A lot of that took place last week whenever Texas received those rains, but it was falling throughout the month of May. And so producers could very well have looked at that and made a switch to another crop that it wasn't quite as bad. But from a perspective of all our major crops, I think that it probably won't be a huge decline given the result from a perspective of all the crops combined.
But we should have a better idea of that at the end of the month when the USDA has the major report, right?
June 30th acreage report will give us a clearer picture.
Well, soybean analysts are also waiting to see that June 30th USDA acreage report. As DTN notes, the predominant present bearish outlook in that market for new crop seems reasonable. However, the June 30 numbers have surprised and changed the course of markets before. Trader Virgil Robinson has been looking closely at the technicals of the soybean market. He told Market to Market's Mike Pearson he's keeping an open mind about beans between now and June 30th.
It's conceivable here that the inversion just continues to grow as it did last year. As we headed through the month of June into July, I think the inversion got to $3.50. New crop soybeans, if all these acres come to fruition, and they do in fact yield at what's commonly being used as a factor tonight, we'll have an excess of new crop beans 1 year from now. So I still like the idea of some type of put strategy, or if these prices meet your marketing goal objectives, certainly a sale of some increment would be appropriate.
The majority of retail fertilizer prices continue to be slightly higher across the United States as the month of June began. DTN reports that 5 of the 8 major fertilizer edged upward compared to a month earlier, but none were up with any significance. We break from the markets for just a moment to look at our trivia quiz for this week. We have rolled into June, which is National Dairy Month. Here is an appropriate question. How many gallons of milk does a Mississippi dairy cow produce on average each day? Is the answer 2 gallons, or 4 gallons, or 5 gallons, or up to 7 gallons? I'll tell you at the end of the markets.
We're going to pause for a short break on Farm Week. Coming up, we'll look at the calendar and the rest of the markets. Leighton Spann reports that feeder cattle producers should take measures to protect their prices. In the feature segment today, fertilizer and water quality. It's not an abstract argument in parts of the Midwest.
Committed? Absolutely. People rely on me. I don't take that lightly. Sure, sometimes we get out of sync and things feel forced, That's when the commitment kicks in. You buckle down, hammer it out, and keep it together for everybody involved. So, yeah, I'm completely committed to my marriage. Till death do us part. Commit to your marriage.
Before we get back to the markets, let's look at the Farm Week calendar. A vegetable field day will be held Thursday, June 12th at the Beaumont Horticulture Unit of Mississippi State University. The day is free and the hours are 8 a.m. to noon. The unit is located on Highway 15 north of Beaumont. Vegetable and muscadine grapes will be covered. Deer control, stevia, and hops production will be covered as well. Mississippi State University's Delta Research and Extension Center is shifting its row crops field day earlier this year. Will take place at Stoneville Tuesday, June 17th. The presentations will take place from 10 a.m. to noon, and the field tours will take place from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Lunch will be served. Corn, cotton, peanuts, and soybeans are the focus. Crop production, insects, diseases, and weeds will be covered. It's hoped by having the field day earlier that it will allow growers to get help with row crop problems now rather than waiting until later. Door prizes will also be awarded. Go to our Farm Week website at farmweek.msucares.com for information on these and other events. Now check out this week's Farm Week Snapshot.
A bidding war is underway for Chicago-based Hillshire brands. Pilgrim's Pride on Monday of this past week raised their original offer of $45 per share up to $55. Meanwhile, Tyson Foods, the other suitor in this battle, is offering $50 per share to buy the company. Hillshire officials say the next step is an individual meeting between them and both Pilgrim's Pride and Tyson. Hillshire has a host of well-known brand names at stake. Its portfolio includes Hillshire Farms, Jimmy Dean, Ballpark, and Sara Lee. Despite the continuing upward momentum in prices, protect yourself seems to be the watchword used by some analysts as far as the feeder cattle market these days. Trader Naomi Blooms tells Market-to-Market's Mike Pearson it's a good time to get in on the option side, maybe not selling the futures.
You know, in the past, it's more like the outlook is still so good, you don't really need to do anything. But now you're coming to a point where there's this technical crescendo, and the market is getting close to that big, almost like a psychological, 200-point area where you're just like, what is this? This has never been seen before. So now this is something where technical traders might come in and slam it lower just from that regard. But at the same time, the fundamentals still justify higher prices. So we might see a technical correction, but the big picture for now, it still looks really good.
Brownfield Ag News reports that China has tightened requirements for the importation of milk powder and infant formula. Officials say that 41 foreign manufacturers from 13 countries, including all the major brands, have already been approved. And before our feature story, we revisit trivia for the answer for this week. And the correct choice is C. On average, a Mississippi dairy cow in 2013 produced 5 gallons of milk each day.
The growth of the so-called dead zone at the mouth of the Mississippi River has drawn attention to the problem of nutrients draining into the river from cities and farm fields. The amounts and use of fertilizer in agriculture is coming under increasing scrutiny. In Iowa, the problem is closer to home as nitrates from fertilizer are causing problems in drinking water sources. Market-to-Market's Paul Yeager says removing nitrates is expensive, and the focus now is on preventing the pollution in the first place.
In 2013, Iowa recorded its wettest April in 141 years. Nitrogen not absorbed by crops the previous year meandered its way into local waterways and streams as runoff. And the 2 rivers that supply water to Des Moines, the state's largest city, contain record levels of nitrates. By law, the Environmental Protection Agency requires that drinking water contains no more than 10 milligrams of nitrates per liter. But the Raccoon River tested at 24 milligrams per liter last spring, while the Des Moines River contained 18. And the person responsible for maintaining safe drinking water for 500,000 Central Iowans points the finger directly at agriculture as the source of the problem.
There are urban contributors to runoff into pollution. I don't mean to disparage that, but the idea that feeding the world is somehow this password that lets us get by any responsibility for poisoning our neighbors is a real problem for me.
In response to the record level of nitrates, the Des Moines Water Works switched on its $3.7 million nitrate removal facility for the first time since 2007. The system, which is believed to be the largest in the world, cost $7,000 a day to run, and the bill for the nearly 3 months of operation amounted to over $500,000.
Operating and maintenance, that's very costly when you start putting in treatment systems. A lot of communities will look at drilling a new well, but that's not a guarantee if they drill a new well that it's not going to be drawing a contaminant such as nitrates into that new well. So
Becky Ortman is the Source Water Protection Coordinator for Iowa's Department of Natural Resources. According to Ortman, 30% of Iowa's 880 municipal water supplies are highly susceptible to contamination from nitrates. Many of those municipalities serve small communities where an expensive nitrate removal system would be unfeasible.
Most communities that are proactive will say, I want to take care of this before they reach the maximum load that they're allowed to. EPA designates you can have a 10 MCL is what the nitrate level is. And so once they hit that, then they have to find alternate sources of drinking water for their community. It's kind of like planting the tree. The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is today.
Over 70% of Iowa's drinking water comes from groundwater, which is tapped by drilling wells. Because it is subsurface does not mean it is pollution-free.
They regulate how much you have to test according to where your levels are. So since we're at an 8 average, we test every month. We send a sample in that gets reported to the DNR. We at Griswold, we test it ourselves every day. Just for our knowledge. We're not required to do that, but we test every day.
Perilously close to test numbers that would cap its wells, the town of Griswold turned to the Iowa DNR to explore possible solutions. With a population of only around 1,000, less expensive solutions aimed at preventing contaminated water rather than treating it were explored.
Our primary objective when we go into a community that has an existing contaminant problem is to identify if that contaminant is a point source or a non-point source, and then to try to better define the capture zone area of where their drinking water is coming from.
The capture zone is the area where a well draws its water. Once the capture zone is identified, the source of the pollution can be determined and addressed. In Griswold, the source of contamination was determined to be agriculture, but a solution proved elusive until area farmers were invited to help develop a strategy that would reduce the amount of nitrates entering the water supply.
We was just trying to do it all ourselves, and once we asked them, it was like they come in and they were so much enthused about helping protect our water, not only the city's water, but they're also, since we've started this, they've started doing it in other areas around Griswold that's not in our capture zone.
The solution reached in Griswold was to plant cover crops in the identified capture zone. According to the Iowa Nutrient Reduction Strategy, 92% of nitrates in Iowa's waterways come from non-point sources, and cover crops are the best single farming practice to keep both soil and nitrates from running off farmland. The finding is the culmination of 2 years of work by the Iowa Department of Agriculture, the Iowa Department of Natural Resources, and Iowa State University.
We have some land that lays around the city wells, and we're doing a cover crop to try to control the nitrates in the water. The nitrates in Griswold water have been moving up slowly, and we're trying to, it's not dangerous levels yet, but we're trying to get ahead of it before they do.
Cousins chose a cover crop of ryegrass, which was seeded by plain on standing corn. It is not the first conservation measure that he has adopted to protect Griswold's water supply.
We put a buffer strip around here. It's a 200-foot radius around the well, probably 15 years ago, something like that. thinking at that time that would help, and it probably did help some, but now we're putting cover crops in to help control the nitrates, and we've also gone to spring applied anhydrous, plus another split application where we're putting more liquid in.
For Market to Market, I'm Paul Yeager.
You can watch this story again on nitrates in drinking water on our Farm Week website. That's farmweek.msucares.com. Leighton, I might mention that our soils tend to have more clay in them. Clay binds the fertilizer particles, but you need to do whatever you can to protect your drinking water supply if you have a well.
Sure.
Well, we are at the end of Farm Week for this week. On our next show, we'll return to the Dixie National Sale of Junior Champions held in February.
It is the pinnacle of the Junior Livestock Show circuit in Mississippi. The sale had a record-breaking year in 2014.
In Southern Gardening, native plants. They've been here all along. Now they're moving into the landscape. For the rest of the Farm Week crew, I'm Artis Ford.
And I'm Leighton Spann. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.